Hi, good morning, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are logging in. My name is Ashu Tandon, and welcome to our live chat number 5 in the series of Putting Science to Work. Today, we're going to talk about the chemistry of a great partnership, and we'll talk about it from a drug discovery perspective. I have my colleague Anjan Chakrabarti joining me, and I'll introduce him in a few minutes. In the meantime, just like to give you a quick roundup of the platform that we have here today. If you look at the right-hand side of your screen, you will see a small red rectangle with 3 dots on it. If you click on those dots, the window will expand to show you a number of options, one of which is the chat option on the right-hand side, on the top as well. So if you could just access that, that is what you would be using to send questions to us live that I and Anjan can take a look at and answer. But before we get started, I'd like if you can all just send in a quick note talking about which city, country, and company that you're a part of. If you could put that in the chat window, it can help can help us get started. I'm going to start with a quick video of Syngene, and then we will get the show going. All right, that was great. Anjan, if you could turn on your video and your audio. So once again, welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'd like to introduce my co-host today, Anjan Chakrabarti. Anjan is the Vice President and Head of Discovery Chemistry at Syngene. Anjan received his BSc and his Masters in Science in Organic Chemistry from Jadavpur University, and his completed his PhD in organic chemistry from the Indian Institute of Chemical Technology in Hyderabad. Anjan has worked and lived all across the world. Also did NIH-funded postdoc work at GSK in the Pennsylvania site in the US, and worked on both the West Coast, the East Coast, in Singapore, in many countries across the world, and has now joined Syngene about 2.5 years ago. Anjan and I joined literally a couple of weeks around the same time, so we have a strong kinship together over here. Anjan, welcome to the live chat today. Good to have you on board.
Thank you, Ashu. Thank you, everyone. I guess morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I mean, we are looking forward to an interactive session, and hopefully we can pick up some cues from you, and then we can discuss. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat box. That can make it a lot more interactive. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, wonderful, Anjan. So, Anjan, it's great. You took some of the script that I was supposed to ask people, but I think it bears repetition. So thank you for that. I think it'll be great if I see a lot of queries, a lot of people responding on the chat window, talking about where they are from in different parts of the world, and different industries as well. We have people from the UK as well joining in, and people from Canada as well. Anjan, just to let you know, no pressure, but we have about 68 participants already on the call right now, on the chat right now, and I know this number will increase. So, Anjan, as we, to just kick things off, right? It's been about 2.5, 3 months since we declared the business continuity, and the whole world is in the middle of this global pandemic around COVID. Talk to us a little bit about how the chemistry department at Syngene has managed it and maintained customer commitments in terms of the projects and the scientific experiments that you and your team do.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a very difficult 2 months, I guess, not just for us, but globally and for every one of us. It's been impacting almost every country. And at Syngene, I think we were prepared for not of this scale, but the business continuity plan was there. So as soon as the lockdown in India was announced on March 24th, we went to a shutdown mode to comply with the local government regulations. Although we knew that as pharma and biotech is part of the essential services, so we were allowed to work, and some of our development colleagues were operating during that period. So we took a shutdown for a couple of days and slowly ramped down everything. And then within 2 weeks, we came back and essentially restarted the operation. What we did initially was bringing people in smaller groups and then moving into a shift operation mode so that we can do the social distancing, reduce the footfall at one point of time in the campus, essentially. And then around 20th of April onwards, the operation has gone live completely. And May 4th onwards, I think the whole operation has been up. Every 100% of the employees are back at work. We are operating all the projects. And then in now we are looking and seeing that whatever the lost time because of this shutdown, whatever is lost, and how can we actually come back and fulfill those things. So we are working with our customers and making sure that in the next few months we catch up on those work and make sure that we deliver on the commitments they've made to the customer. Because it is actually important because some of our customers are still on a lockdown mode. They're not able to do the work. So our work, what we do at Syngene for our customers, become even more important at this stage of, at this time. So we are fully committed and we're going to continue to work in this manner, making sure the social distancing and all these norms, the government regulations, and we are complying with all these things, making sure that our employees are safe. So that's how we have done it, and I think overall Syngene it's been a quite successful exercise. This is a learning experience for all of us, and hopefully this will go away someday and we'll get back to our normal. But doesn't look like this. Looks like this is a new normal. We're going to continue like this for next few months as well.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's absolutely true, Anjan, and you and I have been in some of the conversations with our customers, helping them. Talk to us a little bit about, when you talked about customers still in the lockdown period and we continuing to support them. How has work really happened in terms of the bench? How have you sort of allocated work in conversations with clients as to, how to prioritize projects and what work gets done, given that most customer labs are still in lockdown across the world?
Yeah, I mean, what we did when we went on the lockdown mode, the work actually did not stop, because the large part of the work is also a large part of the work that goes on is there's a planning phase. So every work we do has to go through a planning phase. So although our people, our project leaders, our team leaders, our managers are not coming to the workplace, but they were working from home and planning out the next few weeks or the month how to operate. And what we did, we got in touch with almost all our customers and made sure that we prioritize the work. What is the most important needs to be done in the next month, next 2 months, next quarter, so that they can actually, somebody may have a animal study lined up and we have to make a certain, 10 grams of the material to be delivered to go into the animal study. Those type of things where we have gone through a prioritization process and made sure that the most important things are taken care first. And then that's why we are able to manage and help our customers so that they can actually take these compounds or take this work into their own operation and make sure what they can deliver. So I think that is what's been a very important factor, this prioritization of the work and interacting, communicating regularly. I think we have communicated, probably over communicated during this period, So that's something we made sure that we talk to our customers and we are on the same page on the same time.
Great, great. I think that's an absolutely great thing. I noted this comment you made about over communication, and I'm going to come back towards it maybe at the end of the conversation, because I think that's an important aspect. Uh, but, when you look at chemistry, right? It's a tricky science, and tricky in the sense that there are a lot of safety
Mhm.
uh, issues safety measures that one has to take into account to ensure that you don't have a crisis or a problem happening.
Right.
And when you have ongoing operations and you have a pandemic and you have a lockdown, that must have required a lot of work from the team. So, could you outline from a business continuity standpoint what are some of the key focus areas around, supply chains, shipping, safety, hygiene, ongoing experiments, spent solvents, etc. Could you talk to a little bit about what you and your teams went through in the last from the month of March onwards?
Yes. So I think, the safety is of paramount importance in our business
Mhm.
because, as such, chemistry is a risky business to start with. So
Yeah.
what we do is there's a lot of risk involved, and we have to assess those risks and then make sure that we circumvent those risks. Like so, when we went back to the lab, we definitely made sure the labs are safe to operate. That's number one. And
Mhm.
number two is that when we started operating, we also took our safety colleagues, the environmental safety colleagues, with us and make sure that the labs are audited before we occupy after the lockdown. And then when we restarted the work, every day I think the managers are in the lab, walking through the labs, making sure that there is nothing which looks like is suspicious or something like that. So I think these things that the managers were in the lab every day, several times a day, and making sure the operations are safer. And we have also did something which I think as a company we are quite proud, is we looked at and say we have 5,000 employees.
Yeah.
Someday somebody may be infected. So if it gets infected, the whole operation may be shut down. So what we went and did was that, as a Syngene, as a company, we used a zoning methodology. So essentially, whoever is working on a specific building or a specific floor of a building are actually only coming to that floor or that building, and even their food, their supplies, everything is coming to that floor, so that we can contain if there's somebody gets infected. So that was made sure. So people are not moving from building to building. Although we have a large campus, it's a 90-acre land, so you can go from building to building. But people at this point of time are restricted to stay on the same building, and everything, all these reagents, chemicals, supplies, even their food, everything has been delivered to the same building, just to make sure that. Fortunately, we haven't had a case up until now. We have also made sure that everybody's screened if they come to work, and there is a doctor sitting at the main entrance, making sure that somebody coming back from the lockdown is actually checked, and some questions asked, their body temperatures measured and things like, so that we can actually eliminate those kind of things. Like, so these things are continuing, and we are actually, a lot of people were locked down in different part of the country. They started slowly trickling back in, and we are continuing to measure these things, these safety measures, whether it's for the lab safety, taking care of the chemicals, or of isolating the buildings, and those things are continuing. The doctors are there. Apart from that, Syngene has set up this own testing facility. So this was done essentially just to make sure that if required, we can test our employees. Although the government regulation does not allow us to test everyone, but if somebody is symptomatic, they can be tested. And we haven't had to do that, but we are actually voluntarily providing the service to the rest of Bangalore in that region. So there are a lot of samples coming out, and then this facility has been approved by the government of India. And within 6 weeks' time, since the COVID started, we actually set up a RT-PCR based assay system and this testing. So I think all these measures have been taken up just to make sure that our employees are absolutely safe, and so that there is nothing happens to these employees.
Yeah, great.
On the
No,
sup-
that's a
you know
great.
on the supply chain, I will mention that yes, there was a disruption in the supply chain, primarily because we get a lot of supplies from globally, all over globally. We get from US, from European region, from China, and everything. So the flights were stopped. I think in initially first week or two there was this disruption, but since then all the flights, DHL, FedEx, world courier, everybody is operating now. We are able to get materials in and out, so there is not much of a disturbance in terms of a supply chain. China is still a bit of an issue in terms of, because there is also some unrest in Hong Kong. A lot of the material passes through Hong Kong. So whenever we are trying to see if we can avoid Hong Kong and bring the materials through a different route, so that's something we are still working on it. Other than that, I think the supply chain is operating pretty normally. And what was the other thing, Ashu, you mentioned? Supply chain and
Well,
I think that's
the
the
area about employee safety on campus as well. Yeah.
yes. I already mentioned that, the employee
Yeah.
safety in the campus.
Yeah. So Anjan, in the work that your team particularly does, right? We work with a vast variety of clients, right? And we work with virtual startups. We work with small to medium-sized biotechs, as well as some of the world's most well-known and largest pharmaceutical companies. And right now, in US as well as in Europe, there is a lot of talk about reopening of the sites and people coming back. And I think it's just a matter of a few weeks' time when there'll be
Right.
some level of scientific activity that will start happening at our client location. So what would be your advice as a senior leader in the chemistry world to particularly the smaller companies as they look at bouncing back and ramping up activities at their in their sites and in their labs?
I think the most important factor is this maintaining the social distancing, because as we have heard from WHO, we have heard from several government agencies, CDC and everybody, that there could be a second wave, there could be a third wave and things like that. So as long as we can do the social distancing, I think that's one of the most important things. So if you are starting up operation, I think it's best thing to not bring everybody at the same time. Maybe, bring them in batches. I think we have heard with some of our collaborators that they are also doing the same thing. They are increasing their workforce every week by 10% and bringing the people. Only essential people who are required to be at the site are only coming. People who can work from home will continue to work from home. And so those type of measures. And then when you restart the work, I think the most important factor is to look at how do you prioritize your work? Because I mentioned that in the beginning of the discussion. I think prioritization is absolutely important, because we are going through difficult situations. The investment scenario may be getting challenging over the next few months. So as long as if you are prioritizing and you are actually prioritizing your most important asset and focusing on that and making sure that this thing gets done, what needs to be done first. So those prioritization, social distancing, not bringing everybody at work at the same time, and people who can work from home should work from home, continue to work from home. And I think these are the measures somebody can take it so that they can actually, reduce the risk of a second wave or a third wave.
Okay, great. No, I think those are important points. So, we started this talk and we've labeled it around, chemistry of partnerships, right? So Anjan, in your experience, and you've been doing this a very long time, not to say you're old, but you've just been doing it for a very long period of time. What are some of the key elements of a strategic research partnership that you think are really required to have great chemistry, right?
Yeah, I think the partnership is any partnership is built on trust. That's whether it's a CRO partnership or even your domestic partnership, everything is built on trust. So the trust is the most important factor in any partnership. So I think what we generally try to build with our customers and our collaborators is the trust building. So I think in the beginning of the collaboration, we make sure that we understand each other, understand each other's expectation, understand each other's how we operate, what is the priority, taking care of safety, integrity, compliance, quality, these factors. I think we talk about within Syngene, we have this talk about 5 pillars of success. Essentially, one of the success is as a service company, we have to provide the services. That's one of the pillars. But apart from that, there are 4 other important pillars. Essentially, is integrity, safety, compliance, and quality. Those 5 pillars, I think we build on those. I think from the beginning of the collaboration, we always try to communicate and talk to or understand their expectation and make sure that we understand each other very well. What is the priority? And those are the things I think that helps in terms of the trust building exercise. Once you build the trust, then we can be candid with each other in terms of talking and say, It's what is going well, what is not going well. And once we can start talking about what's going on, what's not going well, we can be very collaborative. We can actually share the bad news very easily. Something has not worked. If I can share that news easily with my collaborator, my customer, I think then we can see that we have built a really good trust. I think that's one of the most important factors in building a larger collaboration, because the collaboration is not just about productivity or the chemistry. It's about understanding each other and making sure that we fulfill each other's expectations. I think that's what is more.
Yeah, no, great. I think you've covered quite a few things, Anjan. Anjan, one of the questions that's come in, and I'm just going to sort of go back and forth on that is there's a question that's come in as that with artificial intelligence gaining traction across the world, right, and pharmaceutical industry being no stranger to it as well. As a chemist, what are your thoughts on the impact of artificial intelligence on chemistry and chemistry related work?
I think artificial intelligence has also picked up in chemistry, but I think chemistry is a quite mature science. It's been, chemistry has been there for hundreds of years, and so that way, we have started using artificial intelligence in terms of something called a retrosynthesis. When you are designing a synthesis, you look back and how do I dissect or trisect the molecule, and I go back and build the molecule from scratch. So that retrosynthetic pathways, chemists generally design based on literature precedents or their own knowledge. Now there are softwares available which is based on artificial intelligence, which can actually help you to build that essentially the pathway from reaching from molecule A to molecule B, or starting from a small molecule to a larger molecule and build that thing. So that's been there, but at the end of the day, the wet chemistry is a wet chemistry. Somebody has to go into the lab and make that molecule and put it in a bottle and deliver to a biologist so that he or she can screen that molecule. Yeah. That I think cannot be replaced with an artificial intelligence, at least not at this point of time. Maybe there are automated synthesizers that's coming up. Someday they will build the AI platform into an automated synthesizer where you can actually program things and things can happen. And that may be the future. I'm saying that, that will be a future, I think so. But at this point of time, I think it is an important tool that can help us to do a better job than what we can do now. But at this point of time, I don't think it can be used completely to make sure that it replaces the entire wet chemistry in the lab.
No, I think that's a great aspect. We just linked to that, right? One of the key words that we keep hearing nowadays is drug repurposing, right? Big example of that is remdesivir from Gilead, right? It was originally created to work as part of the Ebola vaccine and treatment, and showed really good efficacy against the SARS virus in the petri dish, and then Ebola, basically fell off the face. So when you look at drug repurposing, right? What's the role of chemistry in all of this, right? Because chemistry, isn't it sort of way behind in the process because you've already synthesized a compound, or is there still a role to play in that?
No, I think it can be, there may be a role to play with that, but I think people repurpose a drug because I think with that molecule already been made by somebody for a different, for a different indication or something like that, it has gone forward or failed in the clinic for whatever reason. But I think there is always the safety profile of the molecule, which is already people have seen the safety profile, so they know this molecule is safe or unsafe. How much is the tolerability and all these things that they know. So there is always a reason to look at a known molecule than looking something into unknown. Now that when you go into repurposing, you may look at and say that, okay, is this the best molecule and can we do something around that? Because that molecule may be patented. That molecule, if I have to use that molecule for a different indication, I still have to pay a royalty to the original innovator. So the question is that you can move that molecule faster because it has got the safety profiles and everything available. But also at the same time, if you want to look around and say, can I make molecules around that and get around the patent? That's where chemistry can kick back and say, okay, we can do that. And I think that's where a lot of the programs recently are actually happening, because we were looking at a lot of COVID-related enzymes and polymerases and things like that, where people looking at known inhibitors and then going around and say, can we design a molecule and make a molecule which is outside of this patent purview. I think that's still their role to play, but I think if you look at directly as on a drug repurposing, there may be a limited role for early chemistry to play. I think the chemical development or the manufacturing people have a larger role to play in there.
Okay, great. Anjan, there's another question that's coming from Michael on the chat window. And just a friendly reminder, we've got about 70 plus people on the webinar right now. On the right-hand side of your screen, there's a red rectangle with 3 white dots. If you click on it, a window opens up with an option for chat. So you can send us your questions over there. Either you can send it to everybody or you can send it privately to me, and I'll take a look at it. So Anjan, one of the questions that's coming from Michael is that what are the new expectations or that you've observed from clients in terms of ongoing projects? So pre-COVID and right now during COVID, are there any differences in client expectations that you have noticed?
Well, I think client expectation definitely has changed during this period. I think there is also a couple of things has happened. Number one is that everybody has actually reprioritized their portfolio. Mm-hmm. So they're looking at what is most important for me. If I have to do a candidate selection in the next few months, can we not look at those chemistry and make sure that we push those chemistry faster and harder so that we can get to the candidate selection? So that reprioritization, looking at the portfolio, that has happened. Plus, another thing that we have seen is that a lot of chemistry that used to happen in their own internal site, say, now that they cannot operate anymore because of the lockdown and because of still it's not operating at the full, they are actually getting outsourced now. So we have seen a influx of new work which has come in because of that. So there are two types of things. One is reprioritization. Second thing is there are actually new work coming in because they are not able to do that work internally, or maybe they were a different CRO who is not able to operate at this point of time. So there is some influx happening from there. So we have seen that both these things happening, reprioritization and also new work coming in. I think the expectation is higher because everybody wants to reach that goal. I mean, nobody knows that this is not a thing that is going to go away next week. This is not a regular flu that you rest on your bed for 3 days and drink enough water is going to go away. That's not happening. So everybody knows that. So it's going to be 3 months. It could be 6 months. It could be longer. The next vaccine will be available. God knows when. Hopefully soon. And until then, we may have to operate that way. So everybody's looking and saying that how do I reprioritize my work and making sure that the most important thing is taken up first. Same time, we have seen that there are work which was very exploratory in nature. So somebody was starting out something new. They decided that maybe this is not the right time to go into those kind of exploratory work. Maybe we just put them in a little bit of a back burner and we'll come back later on the next few months down the line once we have taken care of the high priority work. So these are three things that's happened over this time.
Yeah. I think that's a great question, and the conversations that you and I have been with many of our clients, it's all about reprioritization and prioritization and constantly evaluating ongoing projects and looking at what's important right now.
Right.
I think there's another question that's come in over here from Sandeep saying that there are travel restrictions, particularly for international travel. And how do you see that impacting your business on the chemistry side? So if you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, there will be some impact, but I think one of the things, as I mentioned, this could be the new normal. So we always expected that we will go and visit a customer, present our capabilities, and the customer will come back. They see our facilities. They look at our capabilities. They talk to our scientists, and then make a decision and say, how do we work with it? That maybe that is not going to happen in the next few months. So what we have been doing is we are having a lot of phone calls and Skype calls and calls on Zoom. Looks like these teleconference companies are having a really great time now. All of these calls, so we are having a lot of calls. We have had virtual lab tours. I think we have had virtual lab tours. Recently, I heard one of our customers in our toxicology group actually had a virtual audit recently.
Yes.
So I think these are options we never thought or considered in the past.
Yeah.
So that now that we don't have the option of taking the next flight and going somewhere, we are actually, people are getting very creative. It's not just us. I think globally everybody is getting very creative now. So they
Yeah.
are looking at options and say, now this could actually be a good thing, because then the expectation of face-to-face meeting, which is always a good thing, but at the same time, not for everything they have to come and visit, or we have to go and visit. We may be able to achieve a lot of things over the videos and phone calls and things like that. So we're also learning phase. In the learning, these few months have been a great learning experience for a lot of us, working from home and communicating with our clients. So I think this is something I take it as a positive, and say, and then when the travel comes back, we will still be traveling, that's for sure. But I think we will be able to achieve a lot more, because apart from travel, we can actually continue to use the videos and the phone calls and so on and so forth, just to make sure that we are connected to the customer and we are on the same time. So we are connected, and we know exactly what's happening in each of our locations. I think the travel will impact, but I think eventually it'll resume, and we'll be okay at that point.
Yeah, no, great. I think it's a good optimistic way to end that answer. Just to add on, I know we have been doing what we are now calling these Insta visits. So any client that wants
Yeah.
to visit us and can't do it physically, we will arrange for a virtual tour. What we are now branding as an Insta visit. And as you very rightly mentioned, we are now moving very, very quickly on virtualizing the audits that clients and also in discussions with regulators as to sort of conducting virtual tours. So clients are very open to that combination of local auditors as well as virtually having those done. So we are up to the game on that front. So I think that's a great scene out there. Anjan, one of the things that's another question that's come up is, you know, there is a famous saying, a very popular saying, that never let a good crisis go to waste. And every crisis brings an opportunity, and you've talked about some of those from a travel standpoint and other areas as well. Um, can you talk a little bit about what you are seeing in terms of the basic scientific field in India, and whether it's around therapeutics, whether it's around diagnostics, or whether it's about repurposing? What are you seeing, and any early signs that the industry in India is starting to take root in some shape or fashion?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll start about with COVID first, because I think a lot of companies globally has been jumping into back to the COVID therapeutics. I think there are a lot of companies working on vaccines and things like that. Gilead's molecule is moving along. Moderna is doing a lot of things, a lot of work, and a lot of small companies are now looking into the enzymes and looking, say, can we look at the COVID thing? So that is actually also happening in India. We have been collaborating with some companies where we're looking at different diagnostics and therapeutics both, and both sides. The diagnostics become very important right now, because we can so that we can actually deliver more tests on a short period of time. So diagnostics work has actually increased quite a bit. I think we ourselves have set up our RT-PCR assay, and we're also looking at a serological assay, which will be coming soon. And so a lot of other companies in India, have been doing that. I think globally they're doing that. Apart from that, I think, and we have been in collaboration with a lot of these small companies in India. So apart from that, if you look at it, India has always been a big center for generics drugs. So I think, a lot of the large generic companies are in India. So we do have that infrastructure to do research, but I think the basic research which leads to new molecules and new chemical entities, I think, has been not so much in India up until now. The focus was more on generics. But I think in the last few years, we have seen there are smaller companies coming up, which are actually looking at for a new chemical entity, and we have been collaborating with them. We're actually being in kind of helping them, because they don't. A lot of these companies have now a virtual company. They don't have really a wet lab infrastructure. So we have been helping them in terms of doing the work within Syngene, whether it's a chemistry or biology or the entire gamut of things, from toxicology, pharmacology, biology, and everything that we are doing. So these companies, we have been helping them essentially kind of act more like an incubator although they are not operating within our companies, but actually we have been collaborating with them so that these companies can be incubated and these science can be taken forward. That's something we have been doing for a few years now, and I think hopefully in the next few years, if the venture capital situation in India improves and someday gets better, I think the biggest success in the US of biotechs is because of this venture capital, which has been a great thing in the US. I think nobody else in the world can do as good as US has done over the years on the venture capital. I think that is something India has to catch up. And once that happens, I think China, we are seeing the venture capital and the Chinese government investor is coming in. I think hopefully in future India will have the same thing, and more biotech companies will be coming up, and we will be at the center stage helping them to take through their goals and make sure that they achieve their goals actually.
Okay, great. Anjan, we sometimes have students joining us in these webinars. So we have a question from a student, Shivam, and I thought it was a pertinent one, so I'm just picking this up for the conversation here. The question that Shivam has asked is, do you think this is still a good time to go overseas? So he's India-based, and he's asking, is this still a good time to go overseas to do a master's or a postdoc in an overseas university? Or would you recommend, looking at options in India?
Absolutely. If you can, and if it's safe to travel, and if you can be safe, why not? Because I think one of the things I know there was a statistics that was laid out some time back when the last financial crisis happened. I think the enrollment in the business schools actually increased because a lot of people actually lost their jobs or they're between jobs. They decided that why not invest this time and get a degree by the time I finish my degree, the market will get better and I can get a better job. So think from that perspective, maybe this is the time to actually get a degree, and whether it's abroad or within India does not matter. And once you finish your degree, by then the market will improve, the job situations may improve, and you come back and land a better job. So if you can travel, you should travel, but make sure wherever you are going, you are safe and you have family around them if possible. If not, at least to make sure that you have looked at the statistics and how situations are there, and consider all these options before we jump into a flight and go somewhere.
I think that's a good point. Anjan, we've got time for 2 or 3 more questions, so I'm just going to go through this. What was your PhD about, and what do you think the field has evolved ever since you did your PhD not too long ago?
Well, I think it was many years back, but I think I did my PhD in chemistry and in organic synthesis, and my focus was called the total synthesis. So essentially, you look at a molecule which is isolated from nature, some sort of a biologically active molecules, and then you try to make it synthetically, because from nature you only get a small amount, so synthetically. So we looked at these larger molecules with multiple chiral centers and so on and so forth. So I think that synthesis we did, I think what I can say is that when I look back 20 plus years back when I did my work, and when I look back and say, I mean, maybe there was not a whole lot of utility of making that molecule, because there's a lot of synthesis have come up after that and many things have happened. But the training that provided me and during that process, that the 5 years I spent in the labs and those things, the training, I think that will stay with me for the rest of my life. So I think that training is the most important part of a total synthesis. So I think it not only helps you organic chemistry skills, it also helps you planning skills, because you are talking about a 25 or 30 step synthesis. You have to plan and make sure that you have materials in each of these steps, because otherwise you go 20 steps and you fail, you will certainly fail, and you have to come back, you have to start from scratch again. So this planning and making sure that we keep material in each of these intermediate materials, and so I think that planning is actually very important. So that science, that area has evolved even further. People are making a lot of challenging molecules, a lot of new methodologies have come in, and people continue to do even better science than when I graduated. So I think, but I guess that the philosophy is same still. It's the greatest training you can have if you do a total synthesis of a molecule.
That's absolutely great. That's very useful. I think, we do a lot of interesting work in our labs, right? And in particularly in your labs, which is really at the first step in a lot of work that happens in pharmaceutical R&D. keeping client confidentiality in perspective, and don't share anything around clients. But can you talk about some of the, in your views, what are some of the most interesting areas where there is research happening from a chemistry perspective, right? I mean, I know we do things around protein degradation and stuff like that, PROTACs. So talk a little bit about 3 or 4 areas where there's a lot of research going on, and assuming that we do work in that area. So
Yeah, I think we follow the market. Essentially, what happens as a CRO, you are involved in research where most of the companies are, because that's why we are collaborating with other companies. So a lot of the work actually in happening is in oncology, whether it's kinases or other receptors and things like that. So I think a lot of work happens. But I think that's also, we are very proud of those work that we do with these customers. We do a lot of work in the field of metabolic diseases and many other fields. I think most recently, if you look at it, there are a lot of new things that has come up in the last few years. Is that NASH essentially is an area that is actually picking a lot of steam, and we have done a program with one of our small biotech out of Europe, where we actually involved in a NASH program where we took essentially looking at bile acid modulators and things like that. So I think we have taken the program from a very early stage, for almost like an idea stage to essentially a candidate selection, and that eventually the molecule has the toxicology was also done within Syngene. Mm-hmm. We have done the candidate selection. It has gone into a phase 1 now. So and we are scaling up the material as well. So I think that gives us that gives us a lot of satisfaction, because we have seen the entire gamut of work done within Syngene, and we have our scientists actually collaborated very closely and contributed in terms of intellectual property and driving through the program with our collaborators, because it's a small biotech, only few people, but all the work is done with us. So I think I'm very proud of that kind of work. So I think we have been doing more and more work like that. We still do a lot of standard chemistry work. A large part of our collaborations are still, we have a lot of larger collaborations. Some of them are well known. The BMS is one that is publicly disclosed. We do a lot of work with them. And many other collaborators. But I think we also do a lot of work with these small biotechs and working on these niche indications where we have been able to drive very good quality science and from a very early stage up onto the candidate selection and sometime beyond that as well.
Great, Anjan. That's really good. Anjan, I'm going to end with one last question from my side. Who's your science, and this is gender neutral, so who's your science hero or science heroine?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know whether I have one or like that, but sure. I am, it could be multiple. I think a lot of people, there is someone called R.B. Woodward, and I think he's kind of called the father of organic chemistry. So essentially, he is the one who trained a lot of these recent Nobel laureates, and which came out of organic chemistry Nobel laureates. And I think, that person and Woodward, when he did the work, a lot of these novel technologies like NMRs and all these things were in a very primitive stage or almost not available. So he did work on a lot of things were on a very primitive technology. And with that, the kind of chemistry he did those days was actually, if you look at it now, it's amazing. So, and I think he has been, kind of someone who actually brought organic chemistry into mainstream and say, this is something, I think, if somebody's name comes up, Woodward's name certainly comes into my mind.
Yeah, great. No, thanks so much for that. So Anjan, we are pretty much at the end of the session. Quick announcement for everybody. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you for all the participants. If you have any questions, please send them to team.syngene@syngeneintl.com. And we will do our best efforts to respond to them. Once again, it's team.syngene@syngeneintl.com. And Anjan, any last comments from you before we sign off?
No, there's nothing. I just saw another comment from Michael. He says dozens of coronavirus drugs are in development. Is Syngene has capable to support, accelerate these projects? Anything that wanted to highlight on the services? Of course, we have. I think we are, we are able to do. But the only thing is that we are not so much into viral screening, so we do not have a BCL3 labs and things like that. So those things, there's a bit of a limitation there. But I think the early stage research in terms of looking at a specific enzyme or some sort of a polymerase or something that is involved in the COVID we are working on those things. So we are heavily involved in those type of things. I just wanted to make that comment because I saw the question.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anjan. Thank you, everybody. We will wrap this session up today, and we will put a video clip of this up on our LinkedIn page, so you can go there and see the full snippet. And once again, thank you so much for your support to Syngene, and thanks for attending. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a good day.